Hey y'all, welcome in or welcome back to the channel. Welcome to a new video. Earlier in the week, I asked y'all if there was anything that you have been wanting that you need to be talked out of buying. And today I'm going to be doing that. I need to do my best in this video to talk you out of things that you're telling me that you need to be talked out of buying. Sometimes we know that we shouldn't be buying something, but it's just kind of nice to hear it from somebody else. Like, sometimes it gets through our head a little bit, but it really gets through to us when somebody else is like, hey, you don't need it. I'm looking at you right now. You don't need it. Put it down. Close the tab. Step away from the credit card. Okay? You don't need it. You don't need to buy it. If you like this style of video, I have an entire playlist where I'm talking you out of buying things, so you can go check that out. The last one I did was in early February, and in that one, we did talk spring clothes. That was a common one here. We also talked about food in that video. I'll link the previous video in the cards, and I'll link the playlist in the comments. I do want to say before we get into it that some of the stuff that we're talking about today, or probably all of it, does have reasons why one could buy it or why it might be a good choice or decision for some people. We are focusing on the why you might not need it because people are looking for reasons not to buy stuff. I do want to say that because there are reasons that I may not be acknowledging in this video. The first one we're going to talk about are experiences, but mostly concerts. The first person says concert tickets. I've been to so many, but I really want to go to Forest Frank, but tickets in my city are $100 plus per ticket. Knock some sense into me. I got you. And then the other person says trips and experiences. I find this very difficult because if an artist I enjoy is going on tour and they aren't going near me, I have to buy a hotel room and a ticket. I just spent an insane amount to see Sabrina Carpenter in November because I bought a resale ticket. I need to be talked out of doing it again because I justify it because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I feel many people justify concert travel because it isn't a physical item and more of a cultural experience not everyone gets the opportunity to do. I'm not opposed to anybody booking a trip or going to a concert. Not at all. I'm big fans of this. However, this is the big however, I'm only a fan if you can afford it. Putting something on a credit card or not having the money at the time of purchase is, in my opinion, not affording it. If you don't have, if you're going into debt and you can't afford to pay for it when you're paying for it, this is not affording it, in my opinion. Having room on your credit card also doesn't mean that you can afford it. I'm not making any accusations at the folks who have wrote in. I just feel like this is a good place for a reminder. So my first question is, when you go to these concerts, where is the money coming from? How are you going to pay for it? Do you have a fund of some sort paying for it? Or is this coming out of savings? Is this coming out of an emergency fund, or is this going to be debt? Have you budgeted for this? Do you have a concert fund? And if you enjoy concerts and you like to do them regularly, I think this could be the impetus of establishing a concert fund or sinking fund of some kind where you work on filling it up. Let's say $200. I would suggest that you would calculate an average concert ticket or trip and also how much you could afford to spend per concert. And then you work to saving up to that. And only when that is full can you use it to buy something. And you can continue, saving up and working, filling it up to a certain extent. Like if you went to a concert and you took out $100, but there's $200 in there, then you'd work on refilling it back to $200. I want to do some of the finances in this because at least one of the people mentioned finances. So here's a bit of some math. If one ticket costs about $125, and I'm saying $125 because of taxes and fees and all of that, and you got two tickets, that would be about $250. Let's say you also spent $150 for a hotel and some food, $60 for merch because folks often buy merch at concerts, and if you don't budget for it, you might just be buying it anyways because you're in the moment. And then we'll do another $25 for transportation. Altogether, this is $485. So if you made $15 an hour, you'd have to work over 32 hours to pay for this. If you made $20 an hour, you'd have to work 24 and a half hours. And if you made $30 an hour, you'd have to work 16 and we'll call it a quarter. you may make more than this, you may make less than this. I would highly suggest you, even if you're a salaried person, break down your salary into an hourly wage and consider how long you'd have to work for these tickets. And importantly as well, if your money is going to these tickets, where is your money not going to be going? And does the money going to these tickets support your financial goals? Everybody has different goals, and for some people, what's really important to them at this stage in life is concert tickets. And even if they're not going into that, which is fine, this is the priority. And if going to the concert is the priority, then sure. But it kind of sounds like for both of these folks that the concert tickets aren't the priority. And if the money is going to the tickets, that means it's not going to something else that's important to them, which could be paying off debt, which could be saving for something else. I don't know what those goals would be, but if you're spending money here, that means that money can't go to the other things that are more important to you. Back to our finances example, if you manage to just cut this down to $250 instead of the larger $485, if you made $15 an hour, you'd need to work about 17 hours. If you made $20 an hour, you need to work 12 and a half hours. And if you made $30 an hour, you need to work just shy of 8.5 hours. Maybe one concert doesn't break the bank for you, but if you're doing it 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year, that can really add up. Like that could be thousands of dollars a year. And we might be able to justify it one concert at a time and say like, oh, I don't know, $250 isn't going to impact me that much long term. But if that $250 turns into $2,000, $2,000 could go a long way for a lot of people. And these kinds of things definitely add up if we're doing it a lot. I'm not saying that you're going to regret your purchase, but would you have rather at the end of the day or the end of the year, when you look at your year, when you look at where your money went, are you going to think, I wish my money went elsewhere? I think that events and travel, concerts, they can be so heavily romanticized. And especially if it's an artist that is big and there are people who are making TikToks or Instagram reels about it, you can see people having the time of their life at these concerts. Not only can you feel FOMO, but you can feel like you're not getting the opportunity to make memories if you don't go. And there's all these romanticizations and romantic notions, I think, about travel and concerts. And all of us, I think, can trick us into putting pleasure and desire before anything else, or before other factors and other considerations. The idea that you'll miss out can absolutely entice us to spend money that we don't have, or be more willing to pay anything or pay above what we're comfortable, because you'll never have the opportunity to experience this again. I personally had something like this many years ago. I don't know if there are any Alexis on Fire fans watching. If you are, let me know. But in 2012, they went on their farewell tour, and I'd always wanted to see them. I purchased tickets for my brother and I. We went to, I'm 99% sure it was the last stop on the farewell tour, and it was the closest location to their hometown. And they even smashed their instruments on stage. It felt super final, and it felt like I was part of this big moment, this big cultural moment. Like I was there. I was there at the last concert. I was there. The last song that they played, they reunited 3 years later, my dudes. And not only that, but they released another studio album in 2022. They won a Juno for in 2023, and they're touring as of right now. I think they were in Australia last week. I justified, I mean, it was a local concert to me. I didn't have to go too far. Like it wasn't a hotel kind of thing. I was 18 at the time. I spent money I didn't really have. And it also wasn't just the concert, it was the transportation to the concert. My brother and I, we got food and we got drinks, and actually tickets are probably like $60 each. You know, we probably spent maybe $200, $250 again at the time of money I didn't have. And I don't think you could have talked me out of missing that opportunity at the time. Now, if I know it's coming, I would budget for it. And if I couldn't make it work, I wouldn't go. And that's not for me to say that like your priorities are inherently the same as mine, but knowing what your priorities are financially is going to help you make those choices, I think. Okay, next up is storage. Somebody says cleaning and organizing stuff. I'm in the spring reset mode and I'm convinced a fancy new storage system will fix my entire life. I do kind of feel you on this a little bit. I'm doing spring cleaning myself. I did a bunch over this past weekend. There's something about cleaning and organizing in the springtime in specific that does feel kind of special. Like the sun's finally out. You can open your windows, at least where I live. It can be kind of magical, not gonna lie. But before you buy any container, I ask you, do you know what your storage issues or problems are? Like, have you identified, and do you have pain points? Are we just imagining storage containers just generally? Or have we said, oh, there's something going on with my closet storage. My clothes aren't fitting right. There's something, something going on there. Have we identified that? And then also the specifics of the problem? Because I'm kind of getting the vibe that it's more the general aspect of things. And when it's more general notions of something and not specific, it's not coming from a need or something we've observed in our lives, but it could be a fact of influence. But this can also be coming from aspirational desire. And this could be trying to fix ourselves with stuff or trying to be different people because we are buying new things. As in, if I buy new organizing containers, I will now be organized. And the thing that's going to make me organized is the container. Buying a new container, storage system, basket, drawer, none of that will inherently change your behavior. You will not inherently be a different person because you bought something different. The thing that changes you and makes you more organized are your habits. This sounds like something that could potentially benefit from focusing on a track record or, creating one. And we'll talk more about track records with something coming up. So we'll put a pin in it. It's the next one on the list. Also, something to consider is sometimes when things are cluttered or they aren't as organized as we would like to be, it is because we have too much stuff. And what we are trying to do is make the management of owning too much stuff more manageable. And the problem isn't the organization, because it's not an organizational problem. It can be a stuff problem or a consumption problem, I should say. Like we are buying too many things and we are continuing to buy too many things. And if you keep up that habit, it's going to be near impossible to be organized because you're going to be continuously accumulating more things. An additional factor to that would be that you may be caught in a buy and declutter cycle where you're decluttering things now, or you might be tempted to declutter things now because you're overwhelmed or you feel like the organizing will allow the overbuying to be managed. And so maybe the new organizational stuff does save you some space and you now have room for, 3 or 4 new shirts. But are you trying to organize your space so you can continue shopping as you have been? This is not always the case. I'm just mentioning additional examples of things that could be at play for different folks. If there is a problem with your storage, working on identifying what that problem is going to help you find the right solution for that. Sometimes our storage solutions do suck or we don't have the right system. That does happen. And if we do buy a storage system or buy a new something, that may make our lives easier and we may use it 100%. But unless you actually know what the problem is, then we could just be buying random stuff off of wherever and then just assuming it's going to work and putting it in our home because even potentially we have these romantic notions of organizing. So instead of jumping headfirst into buying the newest or coolest organizing supplies, use what you have first. And even if that stuff does not work out, it can still teach you something about what you may need. Well, not only that, but it helps you get closer to the problem and what's not working. The last thing I want to say about this is that spring cleaning is a seasonal specific event, and spring home resets and spring declutters, spring cleaning, all of those things are really popular right now. They are absolutely not a problem to consume content wise, but for some folks, we may be influenced by this content or influenced to buy or recreate these things for themselves. And some of our desire for organizing supplies can come from what we are consuming. And so if that is at play, I would consider that potentially watching alternative content or reducing the amount of that specific kind of content that you're watching. So the next thing we're going to look at is hobby supplies. So somebody says, all the running things as I'm starting back up again, nice new shiny shoes, a heart monitor, you can go crazy with that, and outfits. Somebody else says, yes, getting sucked into the vortex of getting the best stuff for new hobbies. I'm trying not to let myself go down the route of getting all the best new things for gardening. These, as well as the organizing one we were just talking about, are great things to form track records with. I am a big fan of the track record. It doesn't work for everything, but these are things that it may work for. And while you can go crazy with gardening and running and lots of hobbies, these are also hobbies that you don't inherently have to own a lot of stuff for. They can be started for free or on the cheap. I'm a big runner. I love running. So this one kind of appealed to me personally. To run, you need a pair of running shoes. That is the thing that somebody may need to buy. And I may say, okay, that makes sense. But if you haven't run before and you do have a pair of running shoes, I would suggest to try what you have first before just going out and buying new shoes because you need running shoes or a specific shoe for running. The first 2 years that I was running, I used the same shoes as I was kind of going out and about in. They were like a running shoe that was meant for running, but I wasn't using them at the time for that purpose. And so I started with those shoes and I used them for 2 years, 2 seasons. I wasn't running as much as I was now, but I finally did buy a new pair of shoes, and these ones are exclusively for running. I use them for nothing else. I run at least once a week generally, and that works for me now. But at the time, I didn't need a dedicated pair of shoes, and you also don't inherently need a dedicated pair of shoes if you were just testing the waters, to see if you like it, if it's something that you want to stick with. Even if you've run in the past, you may be inclined to say, oh, I've proven myself in the past. But even if you've run a year or two ago and there's something that you've stopped for a portion of time, there may be a reason why you stopped. And so I think proving a track record that this is something that you like, that you want to do, is something to, in many cases, I can think of a lot of exceptions why that might not be the case. But if you can, trying it out for a little bit is going to be the play. What I was trying to say is if you've done these hobbies before, it can trick you into spending money because it's like, oh, I already have an established track record. Do it now. If you've taken a break for some length of time, do it now. Reestablish it. And so the track record would essentially be building in the practice of the thing. So if you will take the running example, you would say, okay, I'm going to do 1 run a week for 5 weeks. I'll allow myself the grace to miss one if I'm not feeling great. And after 5 weeks, then I can evaluate whether or not a new pair of running shoes is going to be for me. We could do that for the organization supplies, as in I'm going to reset my closet. I'm going to reorganize my closet for spring, and I'm going to focus on putting my stuff away, as an example, putting all my things back every night in my closet. And if I do those 2 things for a month, then I can reevaluate the situation, see what's working, see what's not, and then I can buy something. Similar thing with gardening. If you have tried and abandoned the hobby previously, I would consider, or, organizing supplies as an example. If you bought stuff and then never used them or things got messy again, or, in more traditional sense, you abandoned the hobby, it's not a judgment. I would just consider what factors contributed to that. Was it that you got bored? Was it that you lost interest? Was it that you got injured? Was that life circumstances happened? And if, let's say, life circumstances happened, are life circumstances different now? Just thinking about all the factors that may have influenced not following through or abandonment. Buying new stuff can be a real draw for new hobbies because it feels like we're doing something and we're taking a tangible action into our new hobby or interest without actually having to take a step. We can buy organizing supplies without having to use them, but get that feeling like, oh, I'm doing something good for myself and I'm taking that step into being a more organized person. I would also potentially think about staggered spending. So after the 30 days, after you've worked on a track record, open up a limited budget, either a dollar amount or buying a specific thing, potentially both. And then after an additional time has gone by, maybe an additional 30 days or 60 days, then you can open up additional budget. Number 4 is Amazon. The person says, right now, anything on Amazon, I hear they're having a Prime Day soon. I'm saying this with kindness. I sometimes feel like an ass when I make these videos. I feel like rude and mean. So I genuinely mean this in a kind way. It seems like you're telling me you want something just because there's a sale. We have not established that you need anything, but the desire to shop is coming from, oh, I hear there's a sale. We have not established whether we have a need for something, or use value, a budget, anything like that. This really just feels like there's a sale, so I want to shop it. I may not have anything in mind, but I'm going to go looking for stuff because it's Amazon, because there's always stuff, to want or to buy. And this is your reminder that you are not saving money when you're spending money. Even if you get a 30% discount, you're still spending 70%. And on things that you may not have intended or planned to buy. It's also not a good deal if you cannot afford it either. This goes beyond the Amazon context as well. If you know there's a sale coming up of like a place that you regularly shop, or a place that you might have specific things that you want, check your budget first, please, before the sale starts, to make sure that you can afford the things that you want to buy before the sale starts, before you even go looking. Because if we don't have money for it, maybe we don't even open the Amazon tabs or whatever kind of sale that we're looking at when we hear about it, including the Sephora sale. Maybe we don't even open the webpage. Also, not everybody has an anti-Amazon sentiment. I know a lot of folks here don't like Amazon, but that's not everybody in this community. And so the last thing I would encourage you to consider is whether shopping here supports your own values. I'm just going to touch on spring clothing very briefly. This was a big feature in my previous video, so I want to drop that in here, but I got so many comments for spring clothes, so I'm going to encourage you to check out that video because it was so highly commented. I just want to say a couple of things. I'm going to make this under 3 minutes. I think the weather and the excitement of all the clothes that we can wear because of the changing weather, I think that is a huge part of why people, myself included, get drawn into the spring clothes. And so if you can pull out some spring pieces right now, some of your most favorite spring stuff, do it. I pulled out 2 pieces and it gave me a bit of the spring vibe. We can also get spring vibes with things that aren't our clothes, with our accessories or our beauty products, our hair products. I was wearing some pink lipstick the other day, maybe like 2 weeks ago now, to get some of that spring vibes. Nail polish as well. We can also recreate outfits from Pinterest or Instagram or TikTok, but also things that are spring inspired. Like if there's a playlist, a song, a movie, colors, a piece of art even that feels very spring to you, we can create outfits around that. And then the last thing would be to find ways to find pleasure and contentment in your spring clothes. How could I go about making wearing these clothes more fun, more exciting, or how could I get more pleasure from them and more enjoyment from them? Pulling out a couple of pieces that I could wear before the weather changes is one of the things that I do, but that's not always going to be the case for everybody. So I think that considering how you could go about that appeals to your specific circumstance. I was under 3 minutes. We're going to move on. And we're going to talk about going through something spending. This person says, piercings. I've been wanting new piercings for the past few months, but it's so expensive, and I told myself I wouldn't get any this year. I just went through a breakup though. My brain wants to change my appearance really badly now. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to touch on before we get to the more appearance thing would be proving yourself you can do it. One of the things that can potentially be helpful in some circumstances for some people is reminding yourself that you made a promise to yourself and considering how you'll feel sticking to that promise at the end of the year. I promised myself that I was not going to get a piercing, or I promised myself that I would bring in my case, a different case, to show another example. that I would buy a maximum of 30 clothing items. I am capable of doing it. I will keep that promise to myself. I'm capable of keeping that promise to myself. And this is an opportunity to show myself that I can do it. Believe it or not, I am a big fan of the change your appearance after going through a life change, breakup kind of thing. I'm a fan of it because I think it can be cathartic for some people, and I'm only a fan of it for people who find it cathartic, not just like telling everybody just because you've gone through a breakup or some shitty life thing that you must change your appearance. No. I, however, am typically a fan of the things that are not permanent changes. And I think piercings are on the cusp of that, where yes, you can take them out, but potentially on what it is, you can leave permanent marks on your body, as well as like if you, example, pierce your ears and decide to space it, some of that can be permanent. So if we want to make changes and we're like, yes, I want to make changes, and like that's something you really want to do, I would consider potentially something that may be less permanent. Can't spend no money on this, but like maybe what piercings are, like $60 to $100, something like that. Maybe we could do something for like $10 or $20. I think a lot of people find the hair thing cathartic. So could we do something with our hair maybe? Or we could even do some temporary tattoos. I know not everybody loves those. Those don't tend to be very expensive. You could get some multiple for under $30. You could dye your hair for probably under $30. And listen, the at-home post-breakup hair dye is like one of the most cathartic things out there for some folks. If you wanted to go the hair route, how you do it could definitely depend on your specific situation. Not everybody is in the situation where they could show up to work with purple hair. If you have long hair, you could literally do a bob or a pixie cut. We could do that. We could do, as I was mentioning, some at-home hair dye, get some help with some friends. And that doesn't even have to be like going the purple or the blue route. If you have light hair, you could do some dark hair. If you have dark hair, maybe we could do some light hair. The bleaching anything is going to be expensive, and that has like a harder time of messing it up. So maybe not that. But I'm just saying that there are other options that aren't piercings. And the desire to change our appearance tends to be very strong, but also often temporary, lasting weeks or months. Sometimes maybe years, but usually more in the weeks to months kind of thing. And the piercing kind of thing does feel a little bit more permanent than that as well. I'm not trying to make any assumptions either, but sometimes our desire to change comes from our desire to shed our old selves, to shed our old lives or our hurt, to shed who we were when those things happened. We may want a fresh start or to be a different versions of ourselves, even if it's just temporary. We can also want to feel like we're making a tangible step. We're doing something, we're taking control, we're moving forward, or potentially even to have an emotional release or outlet. Breakups can sometimes lead us to feeling powerless, or we can desire to regain control of our lives, and changing our appearance can help with that. Changing our appearance can be a literal taking the reins, taking control over things. I mentioned all of this to say that there are other options that can be expressions of these things that may or may not be changing your appearance. I'm not dogging on the desire to change your appearance, but there is also the possibility of doing other things, of getting that emotional release, regaining control in certain areas, of expressing the anger and the frustration, of getting fresh starts. So this is at least, I think, an area to brainstorm. What are other things we can do to express the emotions that you would like to express that aren't changing your appearance? I have two similar but different comments, and we're going to end on this one. So I'm going to read them to you. They're both fairly short, and then we'll talk about them. So the first one says, fountain pens. I'm in debt, already have some, and have a bunch of other gel pens, fine liners, and markers. The other comment says, please talk me out of buying camping, backpacking, and outdoor equipment. I want, but do not need, a lighter weight tent, a wider sleeping bag, and a thicker sleeping pad, a nicer pot. I use these for 6 weeks a year only, and old heavily used stuff is fine. Help. I do not want more debt. This is going to be our debt segment, and I'm also going to assume it's consumer debt or specifically credit card debt. Although there's a chance it might not be credit card debt. Some people do put medical bills on credit cards. I know that happens. And even if that is the case, we still have credit card debt that we would need to take care of. Both of these are wants and not needs, because both commenters have said that they mentioned that they have stuff similar to what they are wanting, things that they could use already. In my opinion, we should not be indulging wants when we have credit card debt. In both of these cases, it seems like boredom could be at play, where we're bored of what we have. We're used to this iteration of our stuff. It's not new or exciting anymore. It's not the newest thing. And so what we're coveting is the newest version or the newest thing of what we already have. It may be that the only deficiency in the stuff that you have is it not being new. There's something newer to want out there. There's something, and that's the most exciting part about it. It's that it's new. When we shop like this, if we're shopping like this, we can get stuck in cycles of consumption where the only way that we can appreciate what we have is when it's new. So I highly encourage you to think about appreciating your stuff that you already have, finding ways, kind of like I was saying with clothes, to find contentment with it. How can you appreciate it? How can you find it more exciting? How can you get creative with it? And doing this can make using what we have a more enjoyable experience, opposed to potentially like a punishment. I have an idea specifically for the camping person, but this can apply to situations outside camping. One of the things I think you could do, we take a few minutes, you could journal about it, like make a list, or you could go through photos. Think about all the times that you went camping with the stuff that you have. I think photos, if you have them, would be the best tool. You'll get to see the enjoyment, the pleasure, the memories, the things that you maybe forgot about happened like 5 years ago. I bet you had a delightful time camping, and the thing that made your time delightful and enjoyable was the experience of being with the people that you were with, or potentially by yourself, the scenery that you saw, the things that you guys did together, not the tent that you slept in. I get that having a newer tent, it being lighter, will make traveling easier, and I totally understand that component, but that did not make or break, probably, the overall experience that you had and the pleasure that you took from it and the memories that you took from it. You can buy new equipment once you've paid off your debt. Also, buying more things when you have debt is only going to increase your debt load. It's going to make paying off your debt longer. It's just going to extend it. This can also lead to negative habits, or be an example of negative habits. And by that, I mean continuing to shop as you were when you already have debt. And you can also normalize debt and carrying consumer debt. It can also potentially blur wants and needs, and it can potentially harm your financial future. It's not just a $200 tent anymore. It can be a $1,000 tent by the time we've paid it off, or we're paying off credit cards for so long that we're not able to do the things that we've said are important to us because we were continuing to use the credit cards. If you stop using credit cards and you stopped incurring debt, and it still takes you 8 or 9 years to pay it off, and that's what you can do, it is what it is. But if we're continuing to shop and extend that time, then that's a longer period of time that we're in debt, and a longer period of time that we're not doing the other things that we would like to do that we've said are important to us. So let me give you a few examples. The average American carries over $7,000 worth of credit card debt. And if you had a minimum monthly payment of $175 with the average interest rate of 28.46%, and although the average is over $7,000, we'll just use $7,000, it would take you almost 11 years to pay that off. If you had a smaller balance of, let's say, $1,500, and your minimum monthly payment was $40, same interest rate, it would take you almost 8 years to pay it off, and you'd be paying over $2,000 in interest. That's like taking $2,000 right from your bank account, right from your pay. I know it happens over time, so people don't notice its effects as much, but that's what happens in the end. And I think that sometimes when we just see, oh, our minimum monthly payment is $40. We get comfortable making our minimum monthly payments. And I think that a lot of people forget that a lot of the time, average debts, not every debt, but it's very common, I should say, for minimum monthly payments to be set up on a 10 or a 15-year plan. $40 or $50, even $175 may not seem like a lot to you, but that's a whole heck of a lot of money in a long time. I personally would prioritize paying down the debt as fast as possible. And if you're thinking, well, Shauna, that's easy for you to say, I did do that. I had student loans. Granted, I didn't have as much as the average American or Canadians, but I did have more than the average credit card debt. I maximized savings. I threw everything I had into it, paid it off last year. How much you can contribute obviously plays a role, but if I made my minimum monthly payments and I just stuck to the minimum payments, it would have taken me over 10 years to pay that off. And I was not willing to pay as much interest as I would have paid and then spend the next decade of my life paying it off. So I'm going to encourage you to not buy these things because you have great stuff you can use already. You totally have stuff you can use already that's going to do some of the things that you want it to do. And it's not like there aren't alternatives. And by buying more stuff, it's just going to prolong how long it's going to take you to get out of debt. We can do it. I totally believe in you. I believe in your ability to not buy the thing and to work on paying down your debt. I'm going to encourage you to do that. And I hope that this segment was more positive. That's everything for me today. Thank you so much for watching. I would love it if you would subscribe to catch more content like this and hopefully do another round of this in another month or two. So thank you for watching.